The environment beneath, around, and inside a hurricane has a major influence on how strong a storm can become. To visualize three of these influences, let's use North Fort Myers Community Pool as a backdrop and step inside a brand new NBC2 animation. Influence number one, water temperatures. A key ingredient for hurricanes to form is warm ocean water. If you think of the pool here as being the ocean, once the water gets to at least 80 degrees, a significant amount of heat is released into the atmosphere when the water from the pool, or in our case the ocean, evaporates. You can see this in action. When air rises, it cools and condenses into showers and downpours and thunderstorms. And the heat that it's pulling from the surface of the ocean helps to give things like tropical waves an extra kick. An important place to watch is here in the Gulf of Mexico between Cape Coral and Cancun. The Gulf Loop Current often holds some of the warmest waters in the entire Gulf thanks to underwater currents pulling it out of the Caribbean. This is a place where hurricanes can get very strong very fast. Hurricane Michael in 2018 is a great example, going from a Category 2 to a Category 4 as it moved over the current. Influence number two, the West African monsoon. Now, if you'd use your imagination for a moment, pretend that the pool deck here is Western Africa and the pool is the Atlantic Ocean. When this tropical wave right here moves off the western coast of Africa, it's able to get stronger the moment it hits the ocean because it's tapping into the energy that it's pulling from the warm waters below. Now, on years when the West African monsoon is more active, there's simply more tropical waves moving over top of Africa, hitting the Atlantic Ocean. This increases the odds that at least one or two of these tropical waves will find the perfect environment suitable for strengthening. Influence number three, eye wall replacement cycles. A major wild card in hurricane forecasting is accurately predicting when an eye wall replacement cycle is going to start and how long it's going to last. Take a look. Now, if we were to generate a giant hurricane over top of the pool here in North Fort Myers, we can get an idea as to what an eye wall replacement cycle might look like. These only happen in really, really big hurricanes over top of warm bodies of water like the ocean. Now, this hurricane, as you can see, is really, really well defined. See how clear-cut that eye happens to be? At the same time, though, this hurricane is likely tapping out on the maximum amount of energy that's available to it in the atmosphere. When this happens, a new ring of thunderstorms tends to form around the original eye wall. And eventually, this new secondary ring of thunderstorms will take over and become the new eye wall. During this cycle, the hurricane tends to get wider, but it also temporarily gets weaker. And that's why timing is so important. Last year with Hurricane Idalia, the storm weakened from a Category 4 to a Category 3 just before making landfall, because just before it made landfall, it started an eye wall replacement cycle. Now, this process can last anywhere from a few hours to more than a day. And despite all of the advances in modern weather forecasting, it is still very, very difficult to get an idea as to exactly when a cycle is going to begin. Reporting local from North Fort Myers Community Pool, I'm First Alert meteorologist Rob Duns, NBC2. And that takes us to tonight's What's on Rob's Radar. What I'd like to do for you tonight is visually demonstrate why the temperatures will be so much colder on Friday night as compared to every other night this week. And the big deal here is the cloud cover. Clouds play a huge role in the temperature forecast. And to demonstrate this, this here will represent the daytime sky, this here will represent the nighttime sky, and these cotton balls will represent the cloud cover. Did you know that even on nice weather days, only about half of the sun's energy that moves toward the planet is actually absorbed by the Earth's surface? That's because a lot of the sun's energy hits the clouds before it makes it to the Earth and is reflected back into space to the tune of nearly 30%. That makes it very easy to visualize why overcast days, like we've had so much of this week, make the cloud cover a big role in the forecast by keeping the afternoon temperature so cool. Even less of the sun's energy is able to make it down to the Earth's surface, keeping us substantially cooler in the afternoon. Now, clouds have a very different relationship when it comes to the nighttime low temperatures. You know, at night, as soon as the sun goes down, the heat that the Earth's surface does absorb starts to radiate back back into Earth's atmosphere. But on nights when you have abundant cloud cover, like we've had every single night this week so far, they act like the world's biggest blanket by preventing that heat from escaping out too far into the atmosphere. In fact, NASA says nights with cloudy skies in the right conditions can be some 13 degrees warmer as compared to nights where there's no cloud cover at all. And that's the tie-in to Friday night's forecast. On Friday night, we're expecting to get rid of the cloud cover, and that will allow the heat to radiate away from the Earth's surface at night, giving way to not only the coolest temperatures in the 7-day forecast, but potentially some of the coolest temperatures of the winter season so far. And gosh, seeing images of the Everglades like that, it's not surprising that now the latest update on the drought monitor is extreme, a level 4 out of 5 for nearly every single portion of the Gulf Coast. You know, the drought monitor scale is very different than other weather scales you're probably familiar with. Like during hurricane season, when a storm hits 157 mile-per-hour winds, it's a category 5, whether it's in the middle of the ocean or making landfall. But the drought monitor is very different. There's a lot more nuance that's involved with putting together a drought monitor. In fact, the folks who do it best describe it using this, a Venn diagram, something you probably did in school. The first circle, the first portion of our Venn diagram is data, like taking into consideration how many inches of rainfall is a community in a deficit for the entire year. The second portion of the Venn diagram, the second information the folks at the drought monitor take in consideration is impacts. They look at things like river and reservoir levels and how many wildfires have been developing. All those symptoms of a drought are important in determining just how bad it happens to be. And the third portion of our Venn diagram is local feedback. The folks at the U.S. Drought Monitor talk to the folks who are on the ground, like state climatologists and farmers, because who knows better the ground conditions than the farmers who grow all of our food? So once a week, the people at the U.S. Drought Monitor, they take into consideration all of these things. And the point where they come together, that's what gives us the U.S. Drought Monitor. It's very comprehensive, but also very, very different as compared to other weather scales. So, is there any relief with the drought? Well, why don't we head over to the weather wall and take a look at Gulf Coast Live Radar. Listen to that. Hailstones estimated by the National Weather Service to be about 1 inch in diameter fell over Lehigh Acres today. Even bigger ones were spotted by Catherine Howard off of Greenbrier Boulevard. Now, hail forms when the updraft or the rising motion of air within a thunderstorm is very, very strong. They have to be in order to be able to support the weight of a chunk of ice. Let's use this model of a thunderstorm here to visualize the process. And let's pretend that this thunderstorm here is producing hailstones about that big, the size of a quarter. Now, the National Weather Service says that for a thunderstorm like this to be strong enough to support the weight of quarter-size hailstones needs to have an updraft of around 50 miles per hour. Now, as the storm ages here, one of two things is probably going to happen. The quarter-size hailstones will grow bigger and bigger and bigger and overpower the updraft and start to fall to the ground in the form of hailstones. Something else that oftentimes happens in our area is that as the thunderstorm grows older in age, the updraft begins to weaken. And when the updraft is weaker, it's not strong enough to support the weight of those hailstones, and they fall down to the earth. Now, the atmosphere tomorrow is going to be structured in such a way that we may once again have more thunderstorms on the docket. So why don't we run over to the weather wall and take a look at how Sunday's forecast plays out. Time now for tonight's What's on Rob's Radar, and with some of the coldest temperatures since January of 2022 coming to the Gulf Coast tonight, it's important that you're aware that we may wake up to some areas of frost in the morning tomorrow. And this even goes, by the way, for neighborhoods where your home thermometer might say your backyard is above freezing. How is that possible? Well, something that's important to know is that temperatures on ABC 7, and as reported by the National Weather Service, are taken at a height of about 5 feet above the ground, not at the actual ground level. This means when we talk about temperatures, we talk about the temperatures your face experiences, not necessarily your toes. And this is really important in cold weather situations because cold air is dense and it sinks. And sometimes there can be a big difference in the temperature between the ground level and 5 feet up. To visualize this, I built you another little model here. This green represents the grass, the blue represents the night sky. So let's say, for sake of example, in this neighborhood, the temperatures tonight drop down to 35 degrees. But remember, that temperature is taken at about 5 feet above the ground. Because of the density of air, sometimes you can see temperatures drop 2, 3, even 4 or 5 degrees at a distance of just 5 feet, meaning the frost temperature here at 32 degrees could be cold enough to allow frost to form on this front yard. This is also, by the way, why sometimes you'll experience frost on the hood of your car. Your car doesn't absorb and release heat the same way the earth does. So at night, sometimes it can also cool down to 32 degrees, even if the official temperature report for your neighborhood is 35. Allowing the moisture on the hood and the windshield to freeze in the form of frost. Something very important to keep in mind as we wake up to a chilly morning tomorrow.